The film begins with a view of the room where all the events will take place. A stark, dimly lit office with 8 identical desks, each one holding a single blank sheet of paper with a serial number. The room has a timer on the wall, which currently displays zeros, and a large, opaque black glass window, reminiscent of an interrogation room. It's unclear where this office is located, which country it is in, or even what year it is. 8 candidates enter the room one by one, each taking their seat. They are all strangers, united only by their desire to secure a prestigious and unique job in a powerful company. Some of them begin to observe their surroundings and notice hidden cameras around the room. A few moments later, a stern, uniformed guard enters, armed, which immediately puts everyone on edge. Finally, a well-dressed man known only as the Observer walks in. He begins addressing the candidates, explaining the significance and uniqueness of this exam. He emphasizes that no laws apply in this room except the company's own rules. His tone is cold, calculating. At the end of his speech, he outlines the conditions of the exam. The candidates have 80 minutes to complete the test, and their success or failure will determine the next 80 years of their lives. The timer on the wall begins ticking down from 80, 00. The candidates turn over their papers expecting instructions, only to find them completely blank. Confused, they quickly realize that this is no ordinary test. One candidate decides to write on her sheet, filling it with details about how great she is, her achievements, her qualities. But as soon as the pen touches the paper, the hidden cameras notice it. Without warning, the guard approaches and forcibly removes her from the room. It becomes clear to the remaining candidates that defacing the paper in any way is an immediate disqualification. Now, visibly tense, the candidates begin to contemplate the situation. One of them, a sharp-minded individual, speaks up and suggests that the key lies in following the spoken rules carefully. Whatever isn't explicitly forbidden may be permitted. They agree to work together until they have more clarity on the task, recognizing that, at some point, everyone will have to fend for themselves. The same candidate, now taking on the role of the group's leader, suggests giving everyone temporary names to simplify communication. Lacking creativity, he names the others based on their appearances, by race, gender, or demeanor, calling them white, black, brown, blonde, and so on. One of the participants, who remains withdrawn and silent, is dubbed deaf due to his lack of communication. The brainstorming begins. The candidate labeled white proposes testing the limits of the rules. He decides to stand up and walk around the room, observing everything carefully, while the others watch closely to see if this triggers any consequences. Everyone begins to theorize that the solution might involve writing a question on the blank sheets, which will reveal the real test. The blonde suggests shading the paper with a pencil to see if anything appears, but Black quickly reminds her of the observer's exact words. Any physical alteration of the sheet results in failure. Since manipulating the paper directly isn't an option, Brunette proposes holding the sheets up to a light source, assuming that the hidden question may appear under certain lighting conditions. Each candidate takes turns bringing their sheet to the overhead lights, hoping to reveal the hidden message. Death, however, remains silent and inactive, observing the others. White holds his sheet up to the light source, just like the rest, but no one finds anything out of the ordinary. Black, convinced there must be a specific light source needed to reveal the text, suggests they try ultraviolet light. The blonde notices glass inserts in the walls that could be UV lights but finds no switches to activate them. Desperation sets in as the group realizes they're trapped with no way to leave the room or interact with anything outside the exam space. In a bold move, the candidates decide to smash the standard lights in the room, hoping this would activate the ultraviolet ones. Their gamble pays off as the room dims and the UV lamps on the walls come to life. The group eagerly repeats the experiment, shining the UV light on their papers, but to their disappointment, nothing appears. Dark, observing the UV lamps, points out that the upper part of the built-in lamps isn't glowing. Without hesitation, Black breaks one of the lamps and discovers shards of red glass, realizing these are infrared lamps. Excited, they decide to break the remaining UV lamps to activate the infrared ones. Once again, they hold their papers up to the new light. But still, no hidden message appears. Frustration mounts, and White suggests abandoning the light experiment. He recalls the observer's words more carefully and decides to try something new. He grabs another candidate's sheet and shades it with a pencil, hoping something might appear through a different method. But again, nothing. Desperation setting in, White moves to tear the sheet, thinking maybe its composition holds the key. His next outlandish idea, he jokes about defecating on the sheet, speculating that an unconventional method might be the solution. White presses the blonde to perform the bizarre act, but she refuses, disgusted by the suggestion. Undeterred, White urinates on his own paper, convinced his extreme experiment will trigger the reveal. The result? Another failure. Time is running out. The timer ticks ominously closer to 0 with each passing second. Suddenly, Def, who has been silent the entire time, begins to speak. Rolling the broken lamp shards across his sheet, he speaks rapidly in French, drawing everyone's attention. Dark, the only one who knows some French, tries to translate. Though struggling, she picks up fragments of what Def says, something about needing to see better, and that they only see what they want to see. Bella grows nervous and calls Def crazy, frustrated by the confusion. Tension in the room escalates as the candidates, desperate for answers, are forced to rethink everything they've tried. The group realizes they're not just racing against the clock. They're fighting to make sense of their reality, to uncover what they've been blind to all along. The candidates, visibly agitated, begin thinking once again, but time is running out fast. Darky voices a theory that there may be no question or job vacancy at all. In his opinion, everything happening is merely an experiment or game orchestrated by the company directors, who might be betting on which participants will remain and which will leave. Shaitan interrupts, dismissing Darky's idea, and claims to have a better understanding of how the company operates. She asserts that what Darky suggests isn't the company's style. Suspicion begins to brew among the candidates as Shaitan's knowledge raises eyebrows. The others question why she knows more than they do, and she deflects, explaining that she applied for the job just like the rest of them and only learned about the company through public information. White notices how particularly invested Brunette is in Shaitan's story and suggests that Brunette has a personal reason for being there, possibly a sick relative connected to Dark's knowledge, hinting that perhaps she isn't here by chance after all. After this heated exchange, Brunette proposes they check the guard's pockets, hoping to find a clue. She rummages through his belongings and finds a lighter. The group brainstorms how to use it to their advantage. Black suggests they heat the sheets to reveal hidden text, but the others dismiss it as a bad idea. Instead, they decide to use the lighter to set off the fire alarm, theorizing that the fire sprinklers might spray developer fluid, which could reveal the question on the sheets. Brunette climbs on one of the desks, attempting to reach the fire alarm, but she isn't tall enough. White, growing impatient, crumples one of the forms into a wick, hands it to Brunette, and she sets it alight. The fire alarm goes off, drenching the room with water. The candidates eagerly hold their sheets up, hoping the question will finally appear. But once again, their theory fails. As the water settles, Brunette realizes her own sheet is missing. Panicked, she searches for it and finds the partially burned form she used to trigger the fire alarm. It's her own sheet. White had deliberately handed her the wrong form to get her disqualified. Realizing this, she is horrified. The guard immediately escorts Brunette out of the room. White's actions spark anger in the group, especially from Black, who furiously confronts him. Black, enraged, offers to turn out White's lights, triggering the guard's presence again and revealing the voice-activated light controls. The argument is interrupted when Def starts crying. White approaches him, taunting him to tear and eat his sheet. Frightened and desperate, Def complies, ripping the paper and stuffing it into his mouth. The guard swiftly removes Def from the room for violating the rules. Black, furious at White's manipulation, knocks him unconscious in a fit of rage. The group, not entirely supportive of Black's aggression, ties White up to prevent him from causing further harm. Black contemplates pushing White out of the room, but Blondie reminds him that White can only leave voluntarily. As time continues to dwindle, White regains consciousness and claims he needs to take a pill from his pocket because he's infected with something. Black, skeptical, checks White's pockets but finds nothing and accuses him of bluffing. White collapses again, leaving the group unsure of what to do. Tension escalates when Dark suggests that one of the candidates is a plant sent by the company to observe or manipulate the others. Darky turns this accusation around, suggesting that Dark is the plant herself, trying to deflect suspicion. The group, already on edge, sides with Darky and smugly ties Dark up, demanding more information. Under pressure, Dark admits that she is an employee of the company, but insists she is still competing for the same position as the others. After a brief interrogation, smugly unties her, believing she's telling the truth. Suddenly, White begins to convulse. The candidates frantically search one another to find the missing pill White mentioned, suspecting it was stolen. Dark, being observant and a trained psychologist, notices something off with Darky, specifically his gum chewing. She quickly puts the pieces together and finds the pill stuck under Smugly's desk, hidden in the gum. Darky, however, has no intention of helping White and knocks the pill out of Blondie's hands, sending it flying into a drain on the floor. With no other options, Dark tries to push White out of the room, shouting at the observer for help. The guard immediately intervenes, removing Dark for violating the rule against addressing the observer directly. Blondie, moving quickly, retrieves the pill and administers it to White, who regains consciousness. White immediately turns to Darky, accusing him of sabotage and saying he expected this kind of behavior from him. Darky, undeterred, presses White for answers about the true nature of the exam. White finally reveals his belief. There is no question. The answer is simple. One of them must remain in the room until the end, and that person will win. The others are expendable. At this revelation, the group's attention shifts to the guard, specifically the gun on his belt. Realizing what White is hinting at, they all rush toward the guard, seeing him as the key to victory. But Black is quicker, snatching the gun and pointing it at White. White, sensing the rising tension, decides to provoke Black, daring him to pull the trigger. When Black finally does, the gun fails to fire. Realizing the gun is fingerprint locked to the guard, White seizes the moment, lunging at Black and snatching the gun from him. Now armed and emboldened, White forces the guard's hand to unlock the weapon and points it at the remaining candidates. Darky, remaining calm, offers a solution to the standoff. He suggests White let them go by tearing up their forms, stating, "It's better than a bullet in the forehead." White considers the suggestion for a moment, and Darky becomes the first to leave the room, tearing his sheet as he walks out. White then turns the gun to Black, forcing him towards the exit, but Blondie unexpectedly steps forward, offering to leave next. As Blondie passes Black on her way out, she whispers, "I'm ready," signaling that she has a plan. She approaches the door, but instead of fully leaving the office, she cleverly leaves part of her shoe in the room, keeping herself technically present. As she steps outside, she discreetly turns off the lights, trying to give Black a fighting chance. Black, realizing her intention, tries to grab the gun from White, but White reacts quickly and shoots, seriously wounding him. As Black crumples to the floor, Blondie's plan seems to unravel. But just as things appear hopeless, the timer hits 0, signaling the end of the exam. White, now agitated, yells furiously at the black glass in desperation. However, Blondie notices something crucial: Def's glasses lying on the floor. In that moment, she recalls his cryptic words from earlier and finally understands their meaning. Frustrated and believing he's been cheated, White continues yelling at the observer. A guard approaches him calmly, pointing out that the exam isn't over and White has broken a crucial rule. It's then revealed that Def, unnoticed by the others, had slightly altered the time on the timer, causing it to display incorrectly. In a panic, White tries to shoot himself, but the gun remains disabled. Blondie, now piecing together the final clues, picks up a shard of glass from the broken lamp and Def's glasses. She heads to the form she left on the table and recalls the original instructions from the Watcher. She re-examines the paper and realizes the subtle hint. The question was actually the first one ever posed. Are there any questions? At that moment, Def enters the room, revealed to be the founder of the company. Blondie approaches him, hands him the glasses, and calmly voices the answer. Yes, there is a question. The observer congratulates Blondie on passing the exam, acknowledging that she was the only one who truly understood the nature of the test. But Blondie, instead of celebrating, remains cautious. She looks around, still unsure of what's really going on. She points to Black, who appears to be dead, asking about his fate. The Watcher reassures her, explaining that Black isn't dead. He invites her to check for herself. When Blondie unbuttons Black's shirt, she sees that the gunshot wound on his chest has healed. The Watcher reveals that during their search for a vaccine to combat the virus, they discovered something much greater: a formula capable of regenerating tissue and eradicating all possible viruses. He explains that the company's true purpose is to find exceptional individuals, like Blondie, who possess the right combination of intelligence, empathy, and attentiveness to lead their vision forward. As a final gesture of trust, the Watcher extends his hand, offering her a place in the company. Blondie hesitates for only a moment before extending her hand to the deaf man, asking, "When do I start?" The screen fades to black as the true nature of the exam and the power of the company becomes clear.